and welcome to lesson 2 of unit 11. So this is part 2 to our discussion of the conservation of land and soil. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Our essential question for today is, why is soil management important? Okay, why is it important to kind of control what happens to the soil on our planet? And you hear this essential question, you might be thinking, who cares? What does soil management have to do with me? It actually has a lot to do with you and really your survival when you think about it. Now, to understand why soil management is important, you need to first know about the structure and function of fertile soil. Okay. The first important thing is that it can take hundreds of years to form just a few centimeters of new soil. Okay, soil has the minerals and nutrients that plants need to grow, and soil also absorbs and stores and filters water. Bacteria, fungi, and other organisms in soil, they are the ones who are breaking down wastes and the remains of living things. Okay, so it's kind of really important to the function of the Earth's land ecosystems. All right, we can't live without good old soil. So let's talk about these layers really quickly. The first layer is what we call the litter. Okay, and this is basically just the top layer of dead leaves and grass. Okay, and let me tell you, we're doing kind of a simplified explanation of these layers. You might research it and see some things break it down into many, many layers. This is kind of the simplified version. All right. After the litter, we have what we call the topsoil. Topsoil, it's a mixture of rock fragments, nutrients, water, air, and decaying animal and plant matter. Okay. The water and nutrients are absorbed by the plant roots in this layer because that's where they are. All the nutrients and things are in the topsoil. Then we have what we call the subsoil, right? Below the topsoil. This has rock fragments, water, and air, but it has a lot less plant and animal matter than the topsoil because it's deeper down, right? And then finally, the layer we'll talk about is bedrock. Okay, the natural processes basically help break down the bedrock and form new soil. But the bedrock itself is the rock that makes up the Earth's crust and from which all soil is derived. Okay, hopefully the natural processes you'll recognize, right? Freezing and thawing will gradually break down rocks. Plant roots can grow between rocks and break them into smaller pieces. Animals, acid rain, these are all things that can help break down rock into smaller pieces, and slowly over time that bedrock can help form new soil. Now, because this rich topsoil takes so long to form, it's really important to protect it, right? Without soil, most life on land could not exist. Okay, poor soil management or just not taking care of soil, that can result in some serious problems, and we'll talk about them now. Okay, so the first possible problem is erosion. See, normally plant roots hold soil in place, but when plants are removed due to overgrazing or mining, logging, or farming, the soil gets exposed, right? And the soil particles can then easily be moved or eroded. That's erosion, right? The process by which water, wind, or ice moves, that's the key word there, it moves particles of rock or soil. Weathering breaks it down. Erosion is the movement, okay? Now, what's cool is that there are some farming methods that can help to limit erosion. Terracing, for example, it's a farming method that helps reduce erosion that you can see here. So a terrace is actually a section of a hill, and it's leveled to grow crops and prevent erosion. And the flat surfaces, they actually allow the crops to absorb water before the water flows downhill. So it's a pretty cool farming method that's used in hilly areas. All right. So what's another consequence of poor soil management? It's what we call desertification. Okay. Desertification, it's basically the advance of desert-like conditions into areas that previously were fertile. And this can happen if the soil in a once fertile area, it gets depleted of its moisture and its nutrients. Okay. One cause of desertification is climate. So, for example, a drought is a period when less rain than normal falls in an area. And when that happens, the plants obviously don't survive. And without plant cover, that exposed soil gets easily blown away. Also, overgrazing of grasslands, cutting down trees for firewood, deforestation, those can all be causes of desertification. All right. And the final possible result of poor soil management is what we call nutrient depletion. Remember, plants, they make their own food through photosynthesis, but they need nutrients in the soil like potassium and phosphorus and nitrogen um, in order to grow and survive. And decomposers, right, the fungi and the bacteria, they're the ones that supply these nutrients to the soil. They're the ones who are breaking down waste and the remains of dead organisms. But the problem is some farmers, they use up the nutrients in the soil faster than those decomposers can create new nutrients, right? To replenish it. And so what happens is the soil becomes less fertile. And over time, they just can't grow anything anymore. That is nutrient depletion. When all the nutrients that decomposers can supply are used up, the soil becomes less fertile. Again, if it's less fertile, the nutrients aren't there, the plants are going to have a really hard time growing and being healthy. Okay. But there are some ways that farmers have tried to mitigate this. So the first is by the use of fertilizers. Um, these are basically artificial nutrients that help crops grow. And fertilizers are used in both rural farms, like you can see here, this man's applying fertilizers to his crops, and in industrial farms. This is industrial application of fertilizers. So again, there are artificial nutrients. There are other methods too that farmers have learned to manage soil. One way, they can leave unused plant crops like corn stalks. They can leave them behind to let them decompose, and that's going to add nutrients to the soil. They can also choose to periodically leave fields unplanted, and this can allow it not to get depleted of nutrients. And the final way that farmers can help mitigate this is by rotating their crops. So some crops are going to use more nutrients than others. So what they'll do is rotate crops that use a lot of nutrients with crops that don't use a lot, and that helps maintain the balance in the soil and its fertility. All right. Now, it's not all bad, okay? Sometimes the land that has been abused can be restored, and we call this land reclamation. And it's basically the process of restoring an area of land to a more productive state. So here we have an example. This is land reclamation that occurred at a mining site. All right. The before was during the mining, and then after they turned it back into a green space, which is really good. And now this isn't a solution in every case, but it can happen. All right. Now, that's it for the lesson. So what did we learn? Okay, we learned the layers of soil. We learned what can happen if soil's not managed properly, right? The erosion, the desertification, the nutrient depletion. All of those are not good for our soil, our planet, right? but some land can be restored after these things happened, and we call this land reclamation. All right, so that's it for lesson 2. If you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure you filled in those notes, and I will see you in our next lesson. Ciao.